So I look forward to bringing my experience to the board, and I also look forward to learning how this organization supports the regional area. Thank you for having me.
Great, thanks, welcome.
Welcome.
All right, next item on the agenda, approval of minutes of the January 9th, 2019 meeting. If I can entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those are passed. Next item on the agenda, Executive Director's Report. Joe.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. The update for the local technical assistance program was in your packets. Also wanted to report that our embedded staff planner program, one of our new initiatives, is now getting underway. The intent is for our first 2 communities to have CMAP staff embedded in on-site in the village of Calumet Park in the south suburbs and Sauk Village in the south suburbs beginning the 1st of March. I had the opportunity to do initial meetings with the 2 mayors down there, and subsequently staff has been down. I know they attended the committee of the whole meetings last week and actually last night for each of the communities. And communities are very excited to have our staff coming on board. We're excited about what we think we can learn out of this new pilot program. As you might recall, based on the funding that we were awarded from the MacArthur Foundation and the Chicago Community Trust, the plan is to initially have 6 planners embedded in communities throughout the region. And this really is about finding those communities that are high need, yet at this moment in time, not necessarily the highest need, because we do need to get in there, learn some things, make a difference. But it really is about how we ultimately can grow the program and evolve the program and really make a difference for those communities. So we're excited, and there'll be much more to come, but that will officially be underway at the beginning of March. At your place, each board member should have an update on the dues, and we continue to do well on collections. We're a little better than 80% now. A couple of communities continue to trickle in each week. We did just, the technical due date was January 31, and so we have just this week sent out our past due notices to the handful of communities that aren't paid. In addition, I've been making the rounds to the COG directors and asking for their help in collecting those final stragglers. But as board members, we appreciate anything that you can do to help us close the gap and get those last stragglers in. As you know, we've worked real hard to make sure that the dues amount does not increase, and that has been based on the fact that we've done so well historically on collections. And it did allow us to expand the allocation to the PL program. And so it's real important that we continue to see strong collections on this and can fund programs of value to the region. As I mentioned, the meetings with the COG directors are underway and look to complete those. It won't quite be done by the end of the month of February, but by the first week of March. I've been taking with me 2 of my deputies, Jesse Elam and Stephanie Pfeiffer. And so far, just been great conversations. We view this as an opportunity to continue to strengthen the bonds between CMAP as an organization and those council of governments throughout the region, and continue to learn how we can be a strong resource for those COGs. Last item, I just wanted to say that Melissa Porter, our Chief of Staff, is in Washington, D.C. this week. She's attending the annual meeting of the National Association of Regional Councils, and also while out there meeting with the congressional staff and key members of our delegation, as well as congressional committees and USDOT. She'll be briefing all the groups on our On to 2050 plan, as well as our, at this point, draft federal framework and agenda. And that is my report.
Thank you so much. Next, item 5.0, procurements and contract approvals. Angela?
Good morning, Lady Chairman, Board. Requesting approval for 3 procurements today. Requesting approval to enter into a contract with Epstein and Sons International to develop the Northern Lakeshore Trail Connectivity Plan for the Village of Beach Park and neighboring communities. Requesting approval to enter into a contract with MPC to provide support to stakeholders in Will and Grundy counties in the implementation of water supply recommendations. This project will be funded by a grant CMAP received from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. And the final procurement, I'm requesting a vendor limit increase with Clarity Partners, who is our website developer and maintenance company, from 1.1 million to 1.5 million. This is a 5-year agreement, so this vendor limit will expand to 5 years. And it's for ongoing development and maintenance of the CMAP website and the agency's customer relationship management system. So those are the 3 procurements I'm seeking approval for today.
Great. I will entertain a motion for items 5.1 Northern Lake Trail Plan Beach Park, 5.2 Will and Grundy Counties Regional Water Supply Group, and 5.3 Web Development Contract Cost Increase, either together if you'd like to divide them up. If
I would
have
so
the
move.
motion. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions for Angela? All right, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is 6.0 committee reports. So Frank, you had a meeting of the new committee?
Yes, we had our inaugural meeting of the coordinating committee this morning, and if you'll recall, the coordinating committee consists of 6 members of the CMAP board. All 6 of us are here. It's one of the reasons to have a committee meeting in the morning, so you get good attendance for your CMAP meeting. It also consists of 5 members, the 5 chairs of the 5 working committees, and the intent here is to create an environment where we can review material at an earlier date that's going to be presented to the board, and to integrate the great work of the working committees into the board agenda and board thinking about where we should be going. So it was a first meeting that was testing our agenda and defining our agenda and what we want to accomplish. And substantively, we looked at some of the local capacity building program that's underway. It's still a work in progress for the staff, but some important things moving forward, and we provided some feedback on that. So good first meeting.
Great, and we look forward to hearing more from you. The next item is 7.0 on to 2050 amendment requests. I have the O'Hare Express Service, Commissioner Scheinfeld and Dan Burke.
I'll present from here.
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm pleased to be before you today to present collectively two amendments on to 2050. I have with me today.
Thank you. For the Chicago Department of Transportation. The City of Chicago is proposing to add an O'Hare Express system to the ONTO 2050 fiscally constrained plan. We are proposing to construct a direct and express transportation system connecting downtown Chicago and O'Hare International Airport. Next slide. The proposed project would entail constructing 2 twin underground tunnels, approximately 17.5 miles in length, connecting the central business district right into the heart of O'Hare at approximately Terminal 2. The construction of this system would minimize conflicts with existing transportation systems and instead serve to complement those systems. We are currently in the NEPA process, and the final alignment is subject to that ongoing process, and will give the status and alternatives that we are considering in our presentation today. The proposed operation of the tunnel and electric vehicles moving at high speeds within the tunnel would allow for a 12-minute one-way trip time for an express service between downtown Chicago and O'Hare. The anticipated capacity is approximately 1,900 passengers per hour per direction. The project is proposed to be entirely privately financed and funded for design, construction, and operations. No public funds will be utilized for construction and operation of the project. That would be local, state, or federal. None of those sources are proposed to be used. The important thing to understand today is that we are seeking amendment of the plan so that we can complete the NEPA process, which is triggered by the potential impact to a federal facility, which is the Kennedy Expressway. The proposed alignment would include tunneling under portions of that facility. We are not requesting inclusion in the plan so that we are eligible for federal funds. As I said, the project is proposed to be entirely privately funded. Next slide, please. On the screen is a map showing the proposed project termini. As I noted, it's proposed to go into O'Hare, below parking lot B, similar to the configuration of the existing O'Hare Blue Line station that the CTA operates. This location would allow us to connect directly into the existing pedway that connects the various terminals. The downtown proposed termini would be Block 37. As I think many of you know, there is a partially built facility that the CTA started construction on previously to support future express rail to O'Hare, and we would be modifying this and leveraging that partially built station to improve it for these purposes. So it would be an adaptive reuse consistent with the original purpose. Connecting in at Block 37 also provides great connectivity to transit downtown, connecting to the CTA blue, red, brown, green, orange, pink, and purple lines, and more than 15 bus routes. The blue and red line stations are accessible, of course, by the underground pedway within downtown that goes right through Block 37. Next slide. As I noted, the project would involve the construction of 2 twin tunnels, each 17.5 miles long. They would be a minimum depth of 30 feet below the surface at the crown and deeper as needed to avoid any existing infrastructure. We expect that sound and vibrations would be undetectable at the surface level for the construction of this far down as well as the operation this deep. The tunnels would be excavated and built using tunnel boring machines. They would be approximately 13.5 feet at the outer diameter and 12 feet in the inner diameter. The project would also require ventilation shafts spaced approximately every half mile along the alignment, and these would serve as not only ventilation for the system and air quality as well as emergency egress and ingress. The vehicles operating in the tunnel are proposed to be electric vehicles that would be automated, so they would have 0 emissions, and these would leverage existing Tesla electric vehicle technology. The provider that we are negotiating with for this project is the Boring Company, which is owned by Elon Musk, who has the Tesla company. So they would be utilizing and leveraging significantly innovative electric vehicle and automated vehicle technologies. Next slide. So the question is, why do we need this, besides it being very interesting and innovative? We look at transportation options to O'Hare, between O'Hare and downtown, as being significantly constrained and only getting worse. Anyone who has traveled on the Kennedy understands the congestion, and anyone traveling on the Blue Line understands that it's a very well utilized resource that, especially in the rush, has limited additional capacity. With the growth in the economy of the region and the planned nearly $9 billion investment in the future modernization of O'Hare, we are expecting an 80% growth in trips between the downtown and O'Hare on a daily basis, so that by 2045, an additional 20,000 trips would be made between downtown and O'Hare. The question is, how do we accommodate that? And this is a very important solution to complement the transportation options that we have today. Next slide. This graph shows estimated trips by mode between downtown and O'Hare for 2015 in gray compared to 2045 in blue. So here again, we're showing where does that growth of 20,000 trips, 80% growth, go. We see a modest increase in car or rideshare taxi shuttle options, growth on CTA rail, growth on Metro rail, and that the large majority of the growth would be accommodated through this airport express system. We expect the majority of the trips would otherwise be taking car-related options like TNPs and taxis and shuttles, which would further exacerbate congestion on not only the Kennedy, but the feeder roadways. Next slide. We also expect that having electric vehicles operating underground in a tunnel would offset future risk of additional vehicle emissions from additional vehicle miles traveled on the roadways. We have here a table that describes the expected shift of more than 14,000 daily automobile trips by 2045 to this underground system. That would result in a reduction of a projected 28,000 metric tons of annual CO2 emissions, 3.2 million gallons of annual total gasoline consumption reduction of 700 metric tons of annual carbon monoxide emissions, and a reduction of 310 kilograms of annual particulate matter emissions. Next slide, please. The project supports several pillars and principles of the ON to 2050 plan. One of the main pillars of the plan, as you know, is inclusive growth. And while this project by definition serves a specific geography of the city and the region, we expect that it will have positive indirect economic benefits for the entire region. Providing a high-speed connection between the Central Business District and O'Hare will support significant continued economic growth and support the City of Chicago's competition as a world-class city at a global level, competing for business and economic development, convention travel, and general tourism. Economic impact analysis for the project projects large-scale creation of regional jobs and billions in additional annual payroll benefits. And the contract that the city is negotiating would require participation goals for minority and women-owned businesses, as well as workforce hiring goals. The contract will also ensure that the sponsor is working with local assist agencies to ensure meaningful outreach and engagement. So while this is not a project that leads in direct benefits on inclusive growth, there are many indirect benefits on inclusive growth and supports the prosperity goals of the plan. On resilience, this project, as we've noted, is an important way to grow transportation options and provide critical redundancy to our transportation systems in order to ensure that we have a resilient transportation system. As noted, the proposed technologies project to reduce congestion as well as reduce emissions that are anticipated to grow otherwise in this corridor due to the growth in demand for trips between O'Hare and downtown. The project will also enhance the corridor's existing transportation options to better serve the robust travel demand, especially in the face of disrupted or unexpected conditions. So this would create another alternative to downtown and O'Hare, creating redundancy and therefore improving resiliency. And obviously, altogether, the addition of a transportation option between O'Hare and downtown supports the mobility and environment goals of the plan, adding additional high-quality options for Chicagoans and visitors alike. Next slide. And the third pillar of prioritized investment, the project carefully targets resources to maximize benefit. The plan specifically calls out the need to continue to develop in an infill manner in existing major economic centers, and this supports that intention. Obviously, improving connectivity between downtown and O'Hare, building on that economic development, which in turn supports the overall growth of the region. It also improves access for one of the region's existing most congested and fastest growing areas. And finally, we want to underscore that it requires no investment of public funds. All of these project benefits that have been described and are supporting the rationale for inclusion of the plan would be achieved without having a physical impact on the region that is already fiscally constrained. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you for your consideration.
Any questions?
And I think this is a great idea. It's just a procedural question. Normally, would we seek a recommendation from our transportation committee meeting? I see it's going on the 22nd of February to the transportation committee.
So, as you know, we have now completed a process that all amendments will go through The city approached us on these two amendments in advance of us adopting that process. And so we agreed to a schedule with the city that is not completely consistent with that process, but is substantively consistent with that. Asked them to meet certain milestones for us, and then provided that they met all of those milestones, that we would be in a position to present it for a vote before the CMAP board and the MPO at our March meeting. It will in fact go before the Transportation Committee twice. It has once already for conversation. It will again on the 22nd. And should that body desire a vote, we're more than willing to allow them to take a vote either on the 22nd or schedule a special meeting.
Okay, thank you for the clarity, I appreciate that, thank you.
Yep, Frank?
I don't understand why it has to be included in the plan in order to finish the NEPA process. What is it that, I don't
So
understand.
it's a federal requirement. You know, it's somewhat a technicality, but it is a requirement that in order to be eligible to complete the NEPA process, it does have to be part of the plan. It's a little bit of an anomaly since it is a completely privately funded project, you know, and that the intent is to not seek any public dollars, but for the purpose of NEPA, it does need to be in the plan.
I see. Well, it's a dilemma because I'm an enthusiastic supporter of this. I think it's great for all the reasons that Rebecca indicated. We're making a big investment in the airport.
Yeah.
Access to the airport is important. This is future. Getting from downtown to the airport's a problem. It's getting worse. So, you know, I'd like to see it, and the fact that it's privately funded makes all the difference in the world. I'm not sure I'd vote for it if it were
Right.
costed out for public investment, but be that as it may, I support it enthusiastically. I also support the integrity of the process
Yep.
of preparing the plan. Considerable amount of work went into preparing our plan, and amending it should be equally rigorous. And in reading the staff report on it, there were a lot of gaps in here. There's too little work been done in it. It's a great idea, but too little work has been done to be able to do some of the analysis that you would typically do, as you've indicated in the staff write-up. So you're left with a binary decision, which
Yeah.
is support it because it's a good idea, or reject it because it doesn't meet our standards for evaluating projects. And I don't want to be in that binary position because I support both things. And I wonder if there's any way you can approve it for inclusion and with an amendment that says something like in 1 year after there's a contract between the city and the vendor, review the process or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems it's so early in the process.
So it's a tad of a catch-22, and I can allow the city to speak in a moment, but part of the challenge here is that obviously as an agency, we believe that we should and the public should have the opportunity to review and digest and get comfortable with the contract. But the catch-22 is that negotiations on the contract can't be completed until such time as the private sector is comfortable that they'll get the federal and state and local approvals. So, you know, it's a little bit, how do we take a step with our left foot and a step with our right foot to make sure that there's the appropriate level of transparency while not necessarily standing in the way of what is a private venture. Rebecca, you care to speak to that?
Yeah, I think the important thing is that the board and the policy committee be evaluating this project as described and proposed. There is public speculation about what could or could not be, and we've been clear about what our project would be, and in regarding public funding or the lack thereof specifically. And that seems to me the biggest question raised by the public in terms of whether or not to approve this in the plan. As defined, this project would not include public funding for construction or operations or maintenance. And we've also shared, and it's included in the memo, several other broad outlines of what we expect the final project agreement would include. That project agreement would be subject to approval of the City Council of Chicago. It will be made available for the public, including this body, before the City Council would act to vote. It needs to be introduced and then reviewed before the City Council would take a vote. And so there will be continuous public process on this. And I would suggest that there's certain major components of such an agreement that I think are very relevant to the board's consideration and the policy committee's consideration of whether to include this into the plan. But there are also a lot of details that are subject to negotiation which don't rise to that level of sort of critical information to be able to make a decision about this and the broad outlines of it, much like we would with any project at this stage of planning in the region, whether it's publicly or privately funded. So I think it's totally reasonable for the board to set out a clear expectation that they're evaluating the project as proposed on those merits and not based on speculation. And if that project would change, like any major change that could happen in a plan that's a project that's included in the plan, then that would be subject to reconsideration of CMAP.
And that would be one question that I have is this, we would be approving this, adding this to the plan with $0. If it was ever changed to where they were requesting public dollars for this, then it would need to come back to here to change, basically to update that part in our plan.
So I think, the process that would likely, provide the appropriate level of comfort as well as integrity. I think maintaining our integrity would be some type of conditional approval on it. It's not much different from an approach that was taken in the go to 2040 plan relative to 53-120, where it was a conditional recommendation for a particular approach on that project. And obviously this body at any time has the authority to take a vote to remove something from the plan. And so, taking a look at a conditional approval, understanding that this is something that's going to have to continue to take some close monitoring and, being prepared to exercise, additional oversight as necessary in the future, is an approach that potentially could work.
And I should just also add that I think this is innovative. I think this is something that we should, and that I will support adding this into our plan, because for a procedural, to get the NEPA approvals, I don't want to see this whole region get in a position where we're shooting ourselves in the foot so we miss out on opportunities like this. But also knowing that because there's no funding attached with this, that the process might be slightly different and less information up front than what we might expect from, let's say, the next project that the city is going to bring forward. So, appreciate it.
Yeah, just a clarification, as I'm relatively new to this board. And I don't want to get too much into semantics, but this idea of conditional versus what I think the commissioner is referring to is what we're approving is the project as is. Is there any difference as far as the federal, whatever the boxes we need to check for purposes of NEPA? It sounds like we're not necessarily suggesting a condition that we would approve it with a huge star or huge asterisk, so much as we're approving this project.
Yeah.
And if this project changes, then it is subject to whatever other review or change that we would do.
So I'm at a bit of disadvantage this morning since my chief counsel is not here with us. She's in Washington, D.C. But the point is, we have a month. Nobody's looking for this body to take a vote today. This is to just start that conversation, and it will come before us in the MPO in March. And so I think we have a little bit of time to kind of work through what would be an approach for approval that ultimately this body could be comfortable with. So relative to the technicalities, I can't give you the answer.
It sounds though fundamentally we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I
I think it's
would
just more a matter how does it get structured.
Yeah, I would just add then to some of my other colleagues, one of the things about this this proposal that I don't think gets enough mention is its impact on economic, corporate and industrial recruitment. And I can just tell you from my personal experience with the mayor recruiting those, any kind of company, both locally, regionally, internationally, nationally, how often, I mean, we push our connectivity and our transportation infrastructure as a main strength, not only for the city, but the whole region. We have the most connected airport in the country and the fourth most connected in the world. And I can't tell you how often it comes up in conversations with CEOs or whoever is making the investment decisions for a company or whatever. Directly to the mayor, they will mention London's Express. I mean, this concept, for all of the great things it accomplishes and many things, there's a branding element to it that I think benefits the whole region that really shouldn't be overlooked. It comes up all the time, and it occupies a place in people's minds when they're making investment decisions that may be a little bit outsized, but it's important.
Actually, that was the same question we were going to ask.
Okay, and, yep,
And just a final comment, it had been mentioned, and it's accurate, I think there are some gaps in this. We're not being asked to vote on this today, so I think that's great. What I would just say is on those gaps, as much of those gaps that can be filled prior to that time, because I get concerned about precedent. You know, we're being asked to make a decision, and I think it's a good project. I think there's great benefit for the region. But the next time someone comes before us that may have some gaps, I'd like to avoid that potential precedent.
No, I think it's a very fair point, and obviously if it were what has been a historically traditional project that is publicly funded,
True.
We would not be looking to make any exceptions, and we would expect the process to be followed verbatim.
Yep.
And again, now we have a clearly adopted process that you folks approved last month that is clear. This predates that, and so we had agreed to an approach in advance of that memo being approved. And it's unique, and obviously we're going to, hopefully, even though it's a quandary, I hope it's a quandary that we face more often, as these unique technological advances come to us, and I hope we're in a position to be challenged by completely privately financed technological advances in the future. So there is some uniqueness to it. But I would agree with you, Mayor. We have an oversight role. We owe it to the public to get this right, and so we just have to try and find the right balance on it.
Thank you.
great. Thank you, we'll be looking for more information over the next month.
Thank you for listening today. We look forward to your support.
Thank you. So the next item we have is 7.2 roadway improvements to support the update to the South Lakefront Framework Plan, and Nathan Roseberry.
Morning. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. Nathan Roseberry with Chicago Department of Transportation, Division of Highways. Happy to be here today to talk about the project we're proposing in Jackson Park to support the Obama Presidential Center. Just a little bit of background and kind of outlining what I'm proposing to present today. I have been asked to stream down previous presentations, so I've done my best to take full advantage of your time. Thank you for that today. Real quick, the Obama Presidential Center is proposed for Jackson Park. Also, the Chicago Park District recently updated their South Lakefront Framework Plan, which includes Jackson Park and South Shore Park. So as a partner in this process, CDOT is currently designing the transportation improvements to support both those efforts. So today's presentation will highlight the combination of improvements for users in and around Jackson Park to improve mobility and safety. And I hope that comes across, that we really have strived to implement CMAP's goals of multimodal improvements, leveraging improvements, and looking at state of good repair. So as part of the South Lakefront Framework Plan, there are 4 sections of roadway that are proposed to be closed to create better and more integrated park space. Some of these have been long-standing recommendations from the Park District. Some of them are more recent with the proposed improvements for Obama Presidential Center. So the 4 roadway closures proposed include from left to right. And real quick, if you're not familiar with where Jackson Park is, it's on the lake, basically between 57th and 67th, south side of the city. You will note that on these slides, north is typically left. It's a little bit different. So going from left to right or north to south, the southern Midway Plaisance from Stony Island to Cornell is proposed to be closed. Cornell Drive from 59th to Hayes, the section of roadway that's currently 3 lanes in each direction in the park, is proposed to be closed. On the south side of the park, both the northbound Cornell lanes from about 65th down to 67th are proposed to be closed, and the eastbound roadway on Marquette from Stony Island to Richards Drive is proposed to be closed. I mentioned Cornell Road being 3 lanes in each direction. This is not a closure CDOT takes lightly, and we are proposing a variety of improvements to make sure that we can accommodate the diverted traffic. As you'll see on this slide, there's a variety of improvements we're proposing in Jackson Park to accommodate those roadway closures. The goal of this project is really to accommodate the regional traffic that currently traverses Jackson Park as much as possible within and adjacent to the park. You'll see that yellow line kind of going from up left corner down to the lower right-hand corner. That is a predominant movement of travel. People traveling from Lakeshore Drive to Stony Island, further south, where they can get to the Skyway or further south. We are looking at improvements along that section of roadway to accommodate those travelers. That includes some targeted roadway widenings, intersection improvements, and the like. We're also looking at Stony Island on the west edge of Jackson Park, looking at targeted improvements there, looking at a consistent roadway cross-section to handle the regional traffic. Also looking at opportunities to make Jackson Park more inviting to get to, because we're really looking to make sure this is a place that people feel comfortable to travel in and also get to. We're also looking at some long-standing requests for underpasses. You know, I think a lot of people when they get in the park really are looking for that environment where they're not having to interact with vehicles, so we're looking to implement some of those as well. So real quick, I'll walk through some of these roadway sections. This is looking north on Lakeshore Drive. As I mentioned, we're eliminating 3 lanes in each direction on Cornell. Right now, Lakeshore Drive from 57th down to 63rd is an unbalanced cross-section. It has 3 northbound lanes, but only 2 southbound lanes. And with that reroute of traffic, we're looking to add 1 southbound lane, so a targeted capacity increase to help with that movement. This, along with those intersection improvements, can accommodate a majority of the traffic. You'll see that there are no proposed changes to the Lakefront Trail or the northbound lanes. We're really trying to minimize any impacts to existing infrastructure. On Hayes, which would now be the east-west connection, as you're kind of coming south on Lakeshore Drive, you would take a right onto Hayes. That intersection at Hayes and Lakeshore Drive would look a lot like the intersection at 57th and Lakeshore Drive currently looks, with the free flow right turn southbound to westbound. Hayes actually is a fairly wide street today, so in an effort really to not increase pavement area in a park, we're actually looking at an improvement here where we can restripe the roadway, restrict parking to actually get an extra travel lane in each direction, not increasing pavement area, and really trying to take advantage of that existing opportunity. On the west side of the park, Stony Island, you'll see the existing cross-section on top and the proposed on the bottom. What we're really looking to do is have a consistent cross-section up and down Stony Island with 2 lanes in each direction with that center median. Right now, it kind of operates as about 1.5 lanes in each direction. It's unstriped, and so if no one's parked there, people will drive side by side. We want to make sure we delineate that space. We also want to add in a center median, which allows space for left turn lanes, which really help to get turning vehicles out of that through lane to get maximum use of the through lanes. It also provides opportunities for pedestrian refuge islands to make it a lot safer to cross the street. We're also, I thought I had my clicks right. We're looking a lot at bicycle and pedestrian improvements. This is a project in a park, and really, this is a little bit different than our transportation improvements or projects that I encountered. This is really a park improvement first, and the transportation improvements to support it. So we are looking very, very thoroughly at opportunities to really improve that pedestrian bicycle environment in and getting to Jackson Park. We're looking at 5 new underpasses to allow people on foot or on bike to be able to cross streets without interacting with vehicles. 3 new signalized intersections where people can safely cross the street at a signal with the walk light. 8 new pedestrian refuge islands, providing space at unsignalized locations for people to walk halfway across, wait, and walk the remainder. 9 intersections we're looking at with curb extensions where we can bring that curb out to shadow the parking lane, making the crossing distance shorter, making people more visible, safer to cross, and then new and better connected pathways in the park. You'll see the new paths in orange, looking to complement the existing path network in Jackson Park, which is very, very robust. There's a lot of great paths in Jackson Park. There's some key connections we can make to make it even better. These pathways also help us to implement the Chicago Streets for Cycling Plan 2020, which looks at north-south and east-west crosstown routes, getting people from the neighborhood to that lakefront trail. Transit also is really important in Jackson Park. While a lot of people don't actually get on or off the bus in Jackson Park, there are a lot of express routes that travel through our project area. It's over 85,000 passengers every day on the routes that go through the park. We're looking at a lot of spot improvements for transit. We're looking at 3 signal consolidations. These are locations where we have very closely spaced signals. Those tend to hamstring capacity. And so by consolidating those into singular intersections, we can clean up the signal timing and allow more time for the movements that need it. 3 new signals. There's also a couple locations where we have existing always stop signs. Those restrict the ability to have progression between signals. So adding signals in help us to interconnect our signals and maintain progression. We're also modernizing our signals in this area. A lot of this project is really state of good repair and bringing us into that point where we can actually start looking forward for new technologies. So you'll see with the project, all the signals where the buses currently run in Jackson Park would be brought up to the newest technologies, and that would allow us to be compatible with interconnecting the signals and also forward compatible with transit signal priority if the routes in the future transition to that. We're also looking at a couple other geometric changes for buses. Typical with projects like this, we work with the CTA to try to find opportunities to relocate or consolidate bus stops, because that's kind of the ground floor of making improvements for transit operations. And we're actually trying something new called a bus bulb at 3 locations where the bus actually stops in the live travel lane, because we have 2 lanes in each direction. That helps their operation, speeds it up, so they don't have the time waiting to kind of get back into traffic. To date, public involvement has been paramount with this project. We at CDOT have supported and also led public involvement with the project. We were at over 50 community meetings in the discussion and approval of the South Lakefront Framework Plan and City Plan Commission processes. We are in the NEPA process, similar to the O'Hare Express. We have had 1 public meeting in September 2018, and we will have at least 1 additional public hearing for the NEPA process. We're also going through the NHPA process, sometimes it's called Section 106, looking at historic elements with the project. We've had 2 consulting party meetings to date, and we anticipate 2 additional. And all of our materials and summaries are available on our website if you'd like to peruse. We are requesting an amendment to the 2050 plan to include this project. We've appreciated the time working with CMAP staff to work through this process and understanding this is kind of a new process. We do really see this project as something that can really support the principles of the plan. It really, at the core of it, it's a state of good repair project. There's a lot of roadways and infrastructure out there that are in need of repair, and we want to make sure when this project's done, all of the roadways in and around Jackson Park are at state of good repair. We're also looking to have that opportunity to support other efforts, whether it be the Park District or the Obama Presidential Center, kind of leverage those different approaches. We are looking at multimodal improvements, really making sure that no matter how people want to get around, they feel safe and comfortable to do it in car, on bus, on bike, or on foot. And really looking at trying to improve quality of life for people in and around Jackson Park, make it a more inviting park to get to, make it safer to get to. Our construction cost estimate is at $179 million. We are going through the NEPA process for a variety of reasons. One of those is to make us eligible for federal funds for future phases. We anticipate approximately 60% of the funds to be federal and about 40% to be either state or local City of Chicago funds. Approximately 25% of those funds would be dedicated to what are technically new vehicle lane miles. So the additional lane southbound on Lakeshore Drive or the additional lanes on Stony Island. As I mentioned earlier, those are targeted increases to offset the net decrease. So when you actually look at the project as a whole, we are actually reducing total vehicle lane miles in the area by about 3 miles. We see that as an opportunity to reduce future burden for maintenance on those roadways. Our construction is anticipated possibly to begin at the end of this year, depending on the federal review process, and we estimate the project would be complete in 2023. We have a lot, as I mentioned, we have a lot of information on the website. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Yep, Frank?
I have two questions, one of which is, what about school bus parking? The Museum of Science and Industry has fleets of school buses every day parking, and I'm sure the Obama Center is going to have an incremental increase in the number of school buses in that area. Is there a place for the school buses to park, or are they going to be parking in the residential area?
That's a great question. We've been working with the Obama Presidential Center on appropriate design for that. We've actually looked at this museum in comparison to other museums nationally and locally. What we're proposing is the frontage on the east side of Stony Island, basically the Obama Presidential Center frontage, could be utilized for bus loading and unloading. And what we found is there's certain times of the year where you have a lot of school buses that come for field trips, but it's not like an every week occurrence. So doing that allows them the flexibility to have more space if they need it for those key times a year, but that could also be used as on-street parking if they don't need it. The location we saw as most similar to this and we used as a reference point is the Chicago History Museum at Clark Street and North Avenue, which is a very similar approach.
Are you working with the Museum of Science and Industry too? Because they use Cornell Drive now, those buses use it to park their buses.
Yeah, so the Museum of Science and Industry had recently installed parking lot on the east side of Cornell for the loading and unloading for school buses. So that's where they use their buses for the loading and loading of passengers.
The other question is were the road improvements designed with the anticipation of the new golf course that's being discussed, 18-hole?
Sure. So our improvements are looking to be forward compatible with the South Lakefront Framework Plan. The Park District has proposals in their plan, a variety of them. Some of them may or may not be implemented, but we're looking to provide that opportunity to provide, more and better connected park space to be forward compatible.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much. Again, this was for informational purposes, so we will be seeing it again. The next item is 8.0, legislative agendas and update.
Gordon is out, I believe, Simone, Anthony is here.
I'm no Gordon, but I'll do my best. All right. At your January meeting, we presented the state and federal legislative framework, as well as the state agenda and federal agenda documents for 2019, which reflect the priorities of ON2 2050. Those are available at your seats. As a reminder, new this year, there's a combined federal framework for federal and state legislation. They're presented in one document that reflects the 3 principles, the 5 chapters, and 14 goal areas of ON2 2050. Where appropriate, the document draws attention to either federal or state policies. CMAP intends to use this framework document to guide and inform policymakers in Springfield and Washington, as well as administrative partners, including the Governor of Illinois and state and federal agencies. Pursuant to Carolyn's concern regarding automated speed enforcement language found on page 22 of the framework, language was added that stresses implementation should be transparent and accountable and protects the public's interest related to privacy and equity. The state agenda and federal agenda are developed and improved in advance of each regular session of the Illinois General Assembly and Congress. The agendas are shorter documents that identify specific state and federal policy issues of interest to CMAP and partners. Like framework document, the language and priorities reflect ON2 2050, as well as new developments and policies at both levels of government. I'm going to go through the priorities right now. The 2019 state legislative agenda identifies 5 priorities. 1, ensure reliable access to planning funds. 2, emphasize performance-based decision-making and accountability. 3, ensure any capital program funding is multimodal, sustainable, and adequate with an emphasis on support for transit. 4, reform state tax policy and build local capacity with an emphasis on supporting local governments through exploring shared and consolidated services. And number 5 is adopt an integrated approach to managing water resources. The 2019 federal agenda identifies 5 priorities as well. Improving surface transportation with an emphasis on ensuring sustainable and adequate revenues, committing to transit, advancing performance-based funding policies, increasing the role for MPOs in programming transportation funds, and harnessing transportation technologies to improve the system and safety for all users. 2, addressing climate change and protecting water and natural resources, as well as facilitating data-driven and transparent investment decisions. We're looking to promote housing options, target assistance to disinvested areas, and coordinate planning. And finally, improve education and workforce development to reduce inequality. For this calendar year, staff is recommending these 5 state priorities and 5 federal priorities, as well as the combined framework to be pursued as appropriate with the Governor, the General Assembly, Congress, and relevant state and federal agencies. So this is for approval for all 3 documents.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve 8.1 federal agenda, 8.2 state agenda, 8.3 federal and state legislative framework.
I would so move.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? I just want to say thank you for addressing my comments. Make for a much
And getting
better
a
document.
specific call out.
Yeah. Thank you, I really appreciate it. I was pleased with that. So, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passed. And then 8.4 state legislative update.
And I'll be very brief with this. As you all know, session has started. We are tracking bills. We will have a bunch of those for you next board meeting. We right now, this is the stage where there are literally thousands of bills filed, so we're going through those. If you have any concerns, whatever, just feel free to ask me any questions. Just wanted you to know that contacts have been made with both capital appropriations committees in both the House and the Senate, and we're kind of monitoring those negotiations in Springfield right now. Important dates of note: Friday is the bill deadline for introductions in both the House and the Senate, and the governor will be giving a combined state of the state and budget address next Wednesday at noon. For all those interested, his transition documents have all been posted onto the governor's website as well. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions on that? All right, we look forward to hearing more on that. So, thank you. Agenda item 9.0, other business. Any other business? Nope. So then 10.0, our next meeting will be March 13th. That will be the next board meeting. And 11.0 is now the time I will open it up for comments from members of the audience. If there's anyone from the audience who'd like to speak, come on up.
Yes. Yeah, good morning. I'm Heather Armstrong, and my concern is about in Des Plaines. We have like 2 streets that are one way, but the aldermen in our district, they'll want both Lee Street and Graceland to be 2-way. They said to bring it up to this committee and the transportation committee, because a lot of people they forget it as like a one-way street, and then they end up going the wrong way down these 2 streets. So if we had it like 2-way, it would make it a lot easier for everybody to get around. Because the current problem is that with both Lee and Graceland, they're both one way, and people are not looking to make sure there's a one way going which way, and sometimes they actually go down either the wrong way on Lee Street or the wrong way on Graceland. So you may want to check into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? All right. Seeing none, on 12.0, we do need an executive session to review minutes of prior closed session meetings.
Where will that take place?
Oh, we're just gonna have that right here.
Okay.
So if I could entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so, and just to let you know, we will not be taking any action outside of executive session after we're finished. So we will be turning off the live streaming now, and we will not be resuming, so we will not be making any
Can I
other
get a
motions.
copy of that slide presentation of the, I can,
The tunnels?